The old Victorian house on Elm Street had stood vacant for years before I bought it at a steal. The realtor mentioned a previous owner who had passed away there peacefully in her sleep, but nothing more. I was drawn to its creaking floors and faded wallpaper, seeing potential where others saw decay. The first night, as I unpacked in the dim lamplight, I felt watched, but chalked it up to new home jitters. By midnight, the house settled into an unnatural silence, broken only by my own breathing. On the third night, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, like someone dragging slippers across the worn carpet. My bedroom door was shut tight. Heart pounding, I listened as they paused right outside, then retreated toward the attic stairs. I grabbed a flashlight and followed, but the attic was empty, dust undisturbed, except for a single fresh footprint in the corner, much smaller than my own, barefoot and child-sized. I hadn't heard of any children in the house's history. The whispers started a week later. They came from the walls at 3:17 a.m. exactly, a woman's voice murmuring my name in a tone both intimate and pleading. "David, come closer." I recorded it on my phone one night, playing it back in the harsh light of day. The voice was clearer then, layered with static, repeating not just my name, but details from my childhood no stranger could know. My dead sister's favorite doll, the scar on my knee from falling off a bike at age 7. My blood ran cold. Mirrors began to fog without cause. In the bathroom one evening, as I brushed my teeth, the glass clouded over and a message appeared in shaky script. "She's still here." I wiped it away frantically, but the next morning, the same words were etched into the steam again, deeper, as if fingernails had clawed through the condensation from inside the mirror. I avoided reflective surfaces after that, but the feeling of eyes on my back never left. Then came the dreams. Every night, I stood in the basement, which I'd never explored fully, watching a woman in a faded blue dress rock an empty cradle. She turned to me with black voids for eyes and whispered, "You took her place." I'd wake drenched in sweat, only to find dirt from the basement floor caked under my own fingernails. One morning, I descended the stairs with a crowbar and pried open a loose board in the wall. Behind it lay a small, yellowed photograph of a girl who looked exactly like my deceased sister, dated 1897. Objects moved with purpose now. My keys vanished from a kitchen table and reappeared on the pillow beside me, arranged to spell leave. Notes in my handwriting, though I never wrote them, appeared in drawers. "She wants what you have. Your life." The air grew thick with the scent of old lavender and decay, strongest near the attic door, which I had nailed shut days earlier. That night, the nails were on the floor, bent and twisted. I researched the house's past desperately. Local records revealed the previous owner, Eleanor, had lost her only daughter to illness in 1912. The child had been buried in the backyard under what was now my garden shed. Neighbors spoke of Eleanor wandering the halls for decades after, refusing to leave her baby behind. One old-timer warned me, "Some ghosts don't want company. They want replacements." Last night, as thunder rolled outside, the whispers surrounded me in bed. They weren't from the walls anymore. They came from under the covers, right beside my ear. "David, it's time to trade." I felt small. Cold hands gripped my wrist, pulling me toward the darkness between the mattress and the floor. When I finally screamed and turned on the light, my arm bore fresh bruises in the shape of tiny fingers. The house is quiet again now, but I know she's waiting. And she knows my name. It was back in 2012 when my buddy Jake bought this old farmhouse out in rural Pennsylvania, dirt cheap, because the previous owners had left in a hurry. The realtor mentioned something about family troubles, but Jake just laughed it off as small-town gossip. The place had this heavy feeling from the moment you stepped inside, like the air was thicker, and the hallways seemed longer than they should be. At first, it was just little things, doors creaking open on their own, lights flickering even after he'd changed the bulbs. Jake figured it was the wiring in an old house. But then his dog started refusing to go upstairs after dark, whimpering and backing away from the staircase like something invisible was waiting there. One night, Jake woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside his bedroom. Slow, deliberate, like boots on hardwood. He grabbed his gun from a nightstand and crept to the door, heart hammering. Nothing there. But when he went back to bed, he heard whispering right by his ear, his name, clear as day, in a voice that wasn't his ex-wife's or anyone's he knew. It sounded like an old woman, raspy and close. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he found scratches on the inside of his bedroom door, deep gouges that hadn't been there before, like fingernails dragged across the wood. Things got worse after that. His phone would ring with no caller ID, just static and what sounded like a child laughing faintly in the background. Jake started seeing shadows in the corners of rooms, darting away when he turned to look. One evening, while cooking dinner, he felt icy fingers brush the back of his neck. He spun around, and there was this faint outline of a woman in the doorway, pale dress, no face, just a blur where features should be. It vanished when he blinked, but the temperature in the kitchen dropped so fast his breath fogged. He called me that night, voice shaking, asking if I believed in this stuff. I drove out the next weekend to check on him. The house smelled wrong, like damp earth and something sweeter, almost floral but rotting underneath. We stayed up late drinking beer trying to laugh it off when the TV suddenly turned on by itself to an old black and white static channel. Then came the voices, multiple now, murmuring low, like a crowded room. Jake's face went white. He told me the previous family had lost a daughter in the 1940s, something about her falling down the well out back. No one ever found the body right away. That night, as we tried to sleep, I heard dragging sounds from the basement, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. Around 4 a.m, I woke to Jake standing at the foot of my bed, staring at me with this blank look. Only it wasn't quite Jake. His eyes were wrong, too wide, reflecting light like an animal's. He whispered, "She's cold down there," before shuffling out. I followed him downstairs and found him in the kitchen, carving symbols into the table with a kitchen knife, mumbling in a language that didn't sound like English. When I grabbed his shoulder, he snapped out of it, confused and terrified. The carvings looked like crude crosses mixed with circles, still bleeding sap from the wood. We searched the property at dawn and found the old well, overgrown and covered with a rotten board. Jake dropped a flashlight down there, and for a second we both saw it, a pale shape at the bottom, curled up like it was sleeping, long hair floating in the stagnant water. Then it moved, turning its head upward toward the light. We ran. Jake sold the place 2 weeks later for half what he paid, telling the new buyers nothing. He still has nightmares about that face looking up. To this day, he won't talk about it much, but sometimes when we're on the phone late at night, the line goes fuzzy, and I swear I hear a woman's voice in the background, humming an old lullaby. Jake just hangs up quick. If you ever drive past that farmhouse on Route 42, keep going. Some places don't let go easy, and whatever's in that well is still waiting for company. It started with something small, the kind of thing you brush off because your brain prefers comfort over truth. Every night at exactly 2:59 a.m., the call button in room 12 would go off. The nursing home was quiet at that hour, the halls stretched long and dim like a throat-swallowing sound. The first time I checked, the patient just stared at me and said she's back. I asked who, but she only pointed toward the bathroom, where the light was already on. The second time it happened, I walked in faster. The room smelled different, like damp air after rain, even though the windows never opened. The patient was sitting upright, eyes locked on the bathroom again. "You left her in there," she whispered, accusing me like I'd made a mistake that couldn't be undone. I stepped closer, every instinct telling me to turn around instead. The bathroom door was cracked open, just enough to show darkness inside where the light should have reached. By the third night, I started dreading the shift. I told myself it was stress, lack of sleep, the usual lies people use to keep reality in a neat little box. But when the bell rang again at 2:59, I froze before even leaving the desk. I swear I heard at that time, faint but clear, like something breathing through clenched teeth over the intercom. Still I went, because ignoring it felt worse than facing it. Room 12 was colder than the hallway. Not air conditioning cold. Something deeper, like the temperature had dropped inside your bones instead of on your skin. The patient didn't speak this time. She just stared at me, eyes wide, and slowly lifted her hand to point. The bathroom door was fully open now. The light flickered, stuttering like it didn't want to stay on. I stepped inside. There was nothing at first. Just tile mirror, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Then I noticed the mirror. My reflection was there, but it wasn't alone. Something stood behind me. Not solid, not clear, but wrong in a way your brain recognizes before your eyes do. It had a shape like a person, but its face was missing. Just smooth darkness, like someone erased it. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. When I turned back to the mirror, it was closer. Right behind me now. I couldn't hear footsteps, couldn't feel movement, but it had moved. And then, in a voice that didn't come from any direction, it spoke. "You saw me." I don't remember leaving the room. I don't remember finishing the shift. The next morning, I asked about room 12. They told me it had been empty for weeks. The patient I kept seeing, the one pointing at the bathroom, had died months ago. Quietly, in that very room, around 3 a.m. And ever since that night, I wake up sometimes at exactly 2:59, with the feeling that something is standing just behind me, waiting for me to look at a mirror. The first thing I remember is the smell. Not flowers, not incense, not even that faint sterile note you expect from a funeral home. It was something older, like damp would sealed too long in darkness. I noticed at the moment I stepped into the viewing room, and it clung to the back of my throat like a memory I couldn't quite place. Nobody else reacted. They stood in small clusters, whispering, hugging, pretending grief had a script they could follow. The funeral director, a thin man with a voice like dry paper, assured us everything was ready. My aunt lay in the open casket at the front of the room, her hands folded neatly, her face arranged into a peaceful version of someone I barely recognized. I hadn't seen her in years. Family complications, they called it. Still, something about her expression felt off. Not wrong exactly, just unfinished, like someone had paused or mid-thought. As people filed past to pay their respects, I stayed in the back. I don't like looking at bodies. They feel like props pretending to be people. But eventually my mother nudged me forward, her fingers cold and insistent. "Just a moment," she whispered. "It matters." I didn't argue. I stepped up, each footfall too loud in the quiet room, until I stood beside the casket. Up close, the smell was stronger. Earthy. Wet. I glanced at my aunt's face, expecting that hollow stillness I'd seen before at other funerals. Instead, her eyes looked tense. Closed, yes, but not relaxed. The skin around them was tight, like she was straining against something unseen. I leaned in slightly, against my better judgment, and that's when I heard it. A faint sound. Not from the room, not from the murmuring guests behind me. It came from the casket. A soft, uneven tapping, like fingernails brushing wood from the inside. I jerked back, heart hammering, and looked around. No one else reacted. The funeral director was speaking quietly with my uncle. My mother stood a few feet away, watching me with a sad, distant expression. I looked back at the casket. Silence. For a moment, I wondered if grief was playing tricks on me, bending reality into something cruel and personal. Then her fingers moved. It was subtle. So slight, I almost convinced myself it didn't happen. But I saw it. Her right hand, folded over the left, twitched. Just once. A tiny, deliberate motion. And the sound came again, clearer now. Tap, tap, tap. My stomach dropped as a cold certainty settled in. That wasn't random. That was a rhythm. A pattern. Like someone trying to get attention. I stumbled backward, knocking into a chair. A few people turned, annoyed more than concerned. "She's not," I started, my voice cracking. I didn't even know how to finish the sentence. Not dead. That was impossible. She'd been declared, prepared, displayed. There was a process. Rules. Reality didn't just slip like that. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew louder. More urgent. And then, with a sound that split the room clean in half, her eyes snapped open.